Hi, this is Brass Check, and we are recording this on February 4th, 2023. We're going to read a news item, and then we're going to play a video that we ran way back in 2021. And it's part of our Nuremberg 2.0 series, and we're going to start naming some of the people that need to be on trial for crimes against humanity. Clearly, Pfizer's CEO, Albert Bourla, PhD veterinarian, is one of the people that belongs on trial in court, and I think behind bars for the rest of his life. But that's up to a judge if it ever gets to a court, which it probably won't. But we can hope. We can hope. Anyway, here's the story. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla made misleading and unqualified comments promoting the use of COVID-19 mRNA vaccine for young children during an interview on the BBC, a UK regulatory agency found. The Prescription Medicines Code of Practice Authority, PMCPA, an independent regulatory body established by the Association of the British Pharmaceutical Industry, ABPI, found Bourla breached several rules of its Code of Practice for Advertising. UK pharmaceutical industry watchdog Us For Them filed the complaint with the PMCPA. In a Substack post after the ruling, Us For Them accused the BBC's medical editor Fergus Walsh of conducting the interview as a, quote, friendly fireside chat, giving Bourla, quote, a free promotional opportunity that money can't buy, unquote, by allowing him to promote vaccine uptake, particularly among young children for whom the vaccine had not even been authorized. The interview in question aired 2 days after the UK government announced it had agreed to purchase 54 million additional doses for the mRNA vaccine from Pfizer BioNTech and 60 million more from Moderna. The PMCPA can fine Bourla only for administrative costs. It does not have the authority to impose other penalties. Yep, figured. So that's the news in February of 2023. This was the Brass Check news on August 9th, 2021, about a year and a half ago, and it speaks to the criminality of pushing these vaccines on small children. And here we have the CEO of Johns Hopkins and some other miscreant waxing eloquent about how important it is to get needles into the arms of these children. These two guys also belong on trial, hopefully convicted and hopefully jailed of crimes against humanity. The target for this is children, okay? And you'll see how they're going to justify it. And I'll tell you right now, but you can hear it from their own lips in a few minutes. They're saying that because we can't vaccinate the whole world, that means that there'll be variants a-brewing, non-stop, that will end up on our shores. So number one, we've got to raise, I don't know, $1 trillion or so to put this vaccine into the arms of every living person on Earth, which is what Bill Gates said he wanted to do back in March of 2020. It should not be news. It's news to the news media, but it shouldn't be news. It's certainly not news to longtime Brass Check listeners. All right, so that's one of their baloney stories, that we're going to have endless variants because we can't vaccinate the world. Okay, but the other story, and this is really sinister, they're saying we can't have herd immunity until we vaccinate the children. Why? Because children represent 25% of the population. And you can't get herd immunity until you get 80%. So by not having the children vaccinated, we will perennially be in a state of non-herd immunity. So we got to get that vaccine ready for the kids. And parents, you just have to give your children over to the process. And we'll see how many of them are willing to do that. I'm afraid millions are willing to do that. Every time I see a small child in a mask, I want to take the parent. Well, I can't say what I would do, what I would like to do. Not happy. not happy to see it. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, here's a chart. Take a look. This is mentions of the word variant on Google, and you will see there wasn't a whole lot of mention of that word in people's search activity until late May, and then suddenly the variant became everybody's obsession, a growing obsession. Well, this clip that I'm about to show you appeared 2 weeks, give or take, 10 days before variant mania began. Now, the actual number of views for this thing, very small, but the people that viewed it, because it was shown live to many, many, many doctors and many, many, many journalists and many, many, many government officials, this is where the variant cock and bull story was floated in a big way. This was sort of the launch of the story. We actually, you know, I always aspire to catch these propaganda operations in their infancy, and here it is. So you've seen the chart. You can see the spiking of discussions of variant on YouTube, on Google, and now you're going to hear the guys that helped sell it. Johns Hopkins, and you have to know that Johns Hopkins is completely in the pocket of Bill Gates to the tune of tens and tens of millions of dollars, as well as Michael Bloomberg. And this Bill Moss guy is one of their point men for mandatory vaccinations of the population. So here's the clip.
If we start seeing these breakthrough infections with variants, then the game changes, and we'll need to not only focus on children and those who mistrust vaccines, but getting third doses out to everyone. And that's not going to be a simple logistical operation.
Wow, Bill, that's really helpful. So the talking about variants starts to think about vaccines around the world, because as you know, one of the concerns people have is as this virus continues to replicate in populations around the world, new variants will come up that may be troublesome, as you described. Talk a little bit about vaccine shortage. So the U.S. seems to, most people predicting everyone who wants a vaccine will get it almost, pretty soon. And the question is, you start to look around the world, tell me what you think about vaccine shortages around the world, the concerns you have about that, and ways that we and others might help address it.
The United States, and I think justifiably, has focused on its own population. Up till now, we had a terrible outbreak pandemic in the United States, really have led the world in cases and deaths. I think it's justifiable that we've focused on getting our own population vaccinated, and obviously the U.S. government invested heavily in the research and development of these vaccines. But we're at a point where the United States really needs to play a bigger role in global vaccine inequities. And we're seeing, obviously, really tragic consequences of the pandemic in India right now. But India is not alone. There are other countries, Brazil, Turkey, that are seeing extremely high cases. And so now that we've kind of reached this point where more than half of adults in the United States are vaccinated, or at least have received this one dose, we need to turn our attention globally. There are gross inequities in COVID-19 vaccine access globally. Some recently reported numbers, 81% of available COVID-19 vaccines have gone to high-income countries, and less than 0.3% to low-income countries. And this needs to change. The big mechanism for doing this, for getting vaccines, particularly to the low and middle-income countries, is something called COVAX. This is a coalition led by the World Health Organization, Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. And they're really trying to lead this charge to procure vaccines, leverage the buying power of this coalition, and get vaccines to the low and middle income countries of the world. But it's been a slow rollout. There are a number of countries still that haven't even vaccinated a single individual. The goal is to provide sufficient number of vaccine doses so that all countries can at least target 30% of their population. And the high priority groups, the healthcare workers, those who are most vulnerable from severe disease. But a lot more needs to be done. I think we've seen, the U.S. Under the Biden administration has re-engaged with the World Health Organization. They've committed $4 billion to COVAX to help procure vaccines for low-income countries. But that needs to be where our focus is, and not just out of humanitarian reasons, although I think that's sufficient, but for selfish reasons. That's how we're going to, protect the United States. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see imported viruses, and I hope not. But as long as there are, large transmission of viruses in other parts of the country, as you said, there's the potential for emergence of new variants, and I just hope we don't see variants that really can escape the immunity provided by our current vaccines. I sometimes fear that people think that, we reach this magical threshold and all of a sudden the virus is going to go away. That's not how herd immunity works. It just reduces the probability of transmission. Now, coming back to your question, can we reach, let's just say, take that for face value, 80, 85%. We know in the U.S. population, 25% of our population is children. And so we're not going to achieve that until we start vaccinating children. And we have this problem or challenge, I'll say, of many people not wanting to be vaccinated. That's a complex issue. We kind of lump it under this term vaccine hesitancy, but there are many reasons why people are reluctant to get vaccines. Some are adamant, and no matter what we do, no matter what kind of communication strategy we have, we may not change their mind. There are other people who are on the fence, and who I think we can provide information.
Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.